The interesting thing about the AW4 transmission is that it has the same initials as my ex-girlfriend, and just like her, it lasted me for about a year before it turned into a complete piece of shit. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace the transmission before it leaves me for one of my friends. As soon as I feel one of the wheels start to slip, I stop giving it gas. You don't want to just gun it and spin the wheels out because you're just going to dig yourself into a deeper hole. So in a way, I'm rocking it back and forth. I give it gas to go backwards, one of the wheels slips, and I let it roll back forwards. You do that a couple times and be familiar with the way your vehicle feels, you'll eventually get out. And the next time you drive it, take her easy. These northern winters can be treacherous, even in vehicles better equipped than your typical front-wheel drive sedan. It's one of many reasons I think Jeeps make excellent first cars, because you don't get stuck. And even if you do, you can often drive yourself out. Anyway, that's enough passive-aggressive references for one video. Now, it can be set off by almost as many things as my ex's back talk, but this video will focus on the axle side track bar mount specifically for the Dana 30. I want to know what kind of miles per gallon I'm getting. Now, I understand driving a car with the aerodynamics of my ex's personality isn't going to give us anything impressive, but with gas prices now skyrocketing faster than her egocentric attitude, I think it's a good move to get some real numbers.
The air filter service interval is every 3 years or 30,000 miles. This one has been in the Jeep for just under 2 years and about 20,000 miles. However, much like my former girlfriend, it's pretty well used and is starting to fall apart, so it's a cheap enough thing and I may as well get a new one.
The Chrysler 8 1/4 isn't really the strongest axle, but it is a reliable starting point. There's a fair amount of aftermarket support for it, and it'll do just fine for anybody not driving their Jeep up a vertical wall while towing my ex's ego. The only saving grace of a low pinion front axle is that they're much stronger in reverse, so if you find yourself pulling people out of the ditch pretty often, it might be worth keeping. So if you have engine oil leaking from the front of your transmission bell housing, the RMS is the #1 culprit. It could also be the back of the head gasket or clutch fluid for manuals. As you can see, I have a drip pan here because this is almost as much of a mess as my friend group after my ex started hopping homies. In this video, we're going to treat the electric fan like my ex treats me and just pretend it doesn't exist. But there's a lot more variables at play here. Firstly, because Wisconsin weather is about as predictable as my ex's mood swings, I couldn't ever gather data on a consistent outside temperature. Well, the fan shroud can certainly be effective, and it does help, which, to be honest, I was not expecting. Thankfully, though, unlike my ex, I can admit when I'm wrong and publicly announce when I am instead of lying to everybody about my past relationships to feel less insecure about my terrible life choices. Side effect caused by a ball pinion steering setup. But if your steering has more slack in it than my ex's, dignity, then I reckon there's probably something wrong with your steering system. If the light doesn't work, I reckon the wires at the pinch point in the tailgate might be chafed, bent, cracked, disconnected, or other adjectives describing my ex's mental state. We all have that one shining light in our lives. When they're around, it's only ever to complain about their problems, and no matter how much money you spend trying to fix them, you can never satisfy their demands despite giving tons of time and effort. For once, I'm not talking about my ex, I'm talking about the check engine light.
What's the difference?
In 1998, to conform to increasingly strict emission standards, the XJ was forced to adopt an OBD2-compliant evap system. The basic idea is that because gasoline evaporates faster than my ex's loyalty, you're always going to get some unusable fuel vapors in the top of the gas tank. 20 gallons is a respectable amount, as that's above the industry average of similar era SUVs' 18-gallon tanks. But considering XJs have the aerodynamic principles of my ex in a conversation, there isn't much you can do in the ways of improving fuel economy.
Thermostat only sits on a thin ledge here, and when putting the housing back on, it can fall out somewhat, which we don't want for various reasons. A common trick is to just use some gasket sealer to hold it in place, but you shouldn't have a problem if your hands are any more stable than my ex's future. The 10.5 is well known for its reputation of being a steaming pile of absolutely worthless scrap metal with internals made out of cereal and the strength of the American education system. Basically, my ex if she was a gearbox. You know what you're doing, a faster 0 to 60 time as well. Being a slush box, the AW4 shares a few traits with my ex, like their inability to make decisions, and just like her, there's an unavoidable 26% parasitic power loss when interacting with it.
I know I did a lot of bitching in this video, and I know I shouldn't take after my ex, but it's really not that bad. 5,000. Thank you. I mean, I'm gonna try to keep this short because I know nobody asked, but that's awesome. I don't know what to say. So I started making YouTube videos pretty much because of my ex. Now, I know that sounds a bit weird. Now, when we were together, I had a Liberty. I had a 2006 Jeep Liberty, and it was not in good shape. It was a beater car, 100%. And my ex loved to just trash on that thing. She would roast me for the car I drove. And can you be humiliated any more than your own girlfriend roasting the car you drive? She didn't even have a car. This was the age when I was learning how to drive, and so was she, but she wouldn't. Anyway, I had this shitbox Liberty that she hated. She just hated that thing. She hated riding in it. She hated talking about it. She hated everything to do with that damn Jeep. But on my side, that was our relationship car, you know? I have a soft spot for that Jeep because it was my first car. You know, everybody remembers their first car. It needed a lot of work, like I said. So I knew, even at this age, that taking it to a mechanic, I was gonna get absolutely ripped off. So I wanted to learn how to fix the things myself. So I started looking on YouTube with the help of my dad. You know, my dad, he actually knows a thing or two about cars, so he would diagnose a problem, and then I would go research said problem to try to figure out how I could fix that myself, you know, with the help of my father, if possible. And nothing infuriated me more than finding videos that were just a complete waste of time. You'd watch a video trying to learn something, and you'd walk away from that video in no better state than you were when you were looking for it. I remember one situation I remember particularly well was the ball joints on a Liberty. So it doesn't have a solid front axle like these Jeeps do. There was a video of this guy replacing a ball joint with, you know, he had the ball joint press and everything in the little knuckle, and it seemed like, okay, so we just got to take off the, you know, the brake and the wheel bearing and whatnot, and then we can press out the ball joint. I don't know, it was like a 15-minute video or so. I watched the whole thing. And me and my dad both watched the whole thing. And, well, we tear down the front suspension, basically, and we get to the part where we're trying to take out the ball joint, and there is not room. There is not room to fit a ball joint press in this knuckle, because my Liberty had four-wheel drive. And so there was a CV axle right on top of the ball joint that you needed to take out the whole CV axle to press out the ball joint. But the Liberty in the video was a two-wheel drive. And I remember at the time not knowing anything about cars, and he didn't even mention that. He didn't say oh, so this is a two-wheel drive model we're working on. If you have a four-wheel drive model, you're gonna run into some other issues. He didn't even, no. He's just okay, we're gonna put the ball joint press in the knuckle here and press it out just like this. And I remember being so fucking mad at the time because I didn't even know two-wheel drive Jeeps were a thing. I was like, who would buy a two-wheel drive Jeep? I say, with a two-wheel drive Jeep sitting right next to me. But at the time, you gotta remember, I didn't know any of this. So to somebody trying to learn these things and just wasting all of this time, tearing down the entire front suspension for my first ever time and learning I couldn't do this without doing even more work, I was so mad about that. And so I started making my own videos. I'm thinking, I'm gonna make the best video on how to do any given project. I'm going to make something that everybody from any age range or knowledge range of these Jeeps can learn from. And that's exactly what I did. Well, one of my motivating factors was the fact that my ex also hated YouTube. She just did not believe in me. And going right back to what I was saying about the Liberty earlier, she hated my car. and she hated anything I did on YouTube. She just had no faith in me whatsoever. Oh, it's a waste of time. Don't even bother doing that shit. Don't even invest in it. Whatever. It's dumb. You're never gonna be famous. And well, that wasn't the goal. I'm not trying to be famous. I'm trying to set a precedent for the quality of tutorial videos that need to be out there. Because like I said, I hate it when somebody makes an informative video that does not inform. Well, that's why I started making the Jeep videos, was because I wanted it to be done right. And they must be working, because now 5,000 of you are following me. And well, I guess I kind of have my ex to thank for that, because every time I got a view, every time I did something for the channel and it worked, that was like, take that, ex-girlfriend. You know what I mean? It was so satisfying to like find success where she knew that I wasn't going to. She was adamant in the fact that YouTube is a waste of time. It's not, I think YouTube is a waste of time. It's YouTube is a waste of time. I ran with that, you know? Feed off of the haters. Bring them on, bring them on. That's kind of why I started roasting her in the videos. It's like, look at me. I'm doing what you said I couldn't do, and it's working. What are you doing? Getting stuck in a snowdrift? So yeah, she's really bad at driving, and she got herself stuck, and that's kind of how it all started. I heard about this from I don't talk to her anymore, obviously. I heard about this from friends of friends. They're like, Waemid, your ex got stuck in a snowdrift like a dumbass. And I was like, well, I recently got stuck in a snowdrift with this old girl right here, and I got out of it. You know, she had to like call her stepdad or whatever to come like hook up a tow strap or whatever and pull her out of the ditch, because she had a PT Cruiser at the time, which, well, that's another hilarious thing. She buys a PT Cruiser. Probably the most hated car on the internet. I bought a Cherokee. Probably one of the most loved vehicles on the internet. And I mean, that whole dynamic right there was just like, I felt like I had made the right decision to continue with the Jeeps that she didn't believe in, to continue making the videos that she didn't believe in. Meanwhile, life was proving her wrong. And whether or not she's found that or accepted that today is a mystery to me, because I haven't said a word to her in a long time. I've moved on, and I know when I roast her all the time, it seems like I haven't, and well, for a time, I hadn't. Roasting her on YouTube and having people be like, oh my god, dude, that was hilarious. Oh, and by the way, the video was great. That was my therapy. I've had some people in comments say, wow, dude, really insecure about your ex there. Are you okay? I don't know if you should be doing that on the internet. Well, that was my therapy. It was you guys. You subscribers helped me move on from a toxic relationship of my past. And I mean, I'm doing better because of it. I mean, I also have my friends to thank. I thank you, friends, because I would often complain to them. It's one of my favorite things to do, actually, is complain. Wonder where I learned that from. So nowadays, when I roast her, it's not out of like petty, you know, jealousy or whatever. It's not out of like, oh, I'm mad at her, you know what I mean? It's funny because it's relatable. I feel like a lot of you people have had that ex, you know, and you're like, yeah, you know, my ex's head is f***ed up just like the cylinder head in my 2001. I can totally relate to that, and it's funny, you know, it's kind of become a running joke. So, ex, if you do still watch my videos, don't take it personally, all right? You've taught me a lot, and hopefully I've taught you a lot about what to judge other people for. So, with that said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.